The bank was unusually busy that morning. The sound of clicking keyboards, shuffling papers, and murmured conversations filled the air as people waited impatiently for their turn. At the very back of the line stood an elderly farmer, his hands rough and cracked from years of labor. He clutched a small folder of papers close to his chest, shifting nervously on his feet. His boots were worn, his shirt neatly tucked though faded with age. His eyes carried both determination and a quiet humility that only a lifetime of hard work could give. He had left his farm before sunrise, traveling nearly 2 hours by bus just to reach this bank in the city. For him, time was precious, cows still needed feeding, crops still needed watering, and his aging body couldn't move as swiftly as it once did. But today was important. He needed to discuss a small loan extension to keep his farm alive after an unexpected drought had destroyed most of his harvest. Without it, he risked losing not just his land, but the legacy of 3 generations. When his turn finally came, he was directed to the bank manager's office. The manager, a sharply dressed man in his 40s, looked up briefly, then motioned the farmer to sit down. But almost immediately, his phone rang, and he excused himself. 1 minute turned into 10, then 30. The farmer sat patiently, watching people come and go. Another hour passed. Every so often, the manager would return, glance at him, and say, "Just a moment, I'll be right with you." 2 hours slipped by. The farmer shifted uncomfortably, his legs stiff, his throat dry. Other customers noticed, whispering quietly to each other. Some shook their heads at the sight of an old man being left waiting. Yet he didn't complain, didn't raise his voice, didn't demand attention. He just sat, holding on to hope. Finally, the manager returned and, with an air of impatience, asked what the farmer needed. The old man's voice trembled slightly as he explained about the drought, the crops, and his plea for just a little more time to repay his loan. The manager leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his tone cold. "I'm sorry, rules are rules. If you can't make your payments on time, we can't extend further credit." The farmer lowered his head, pain flashing across his face. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the room. But just then, something unexpected happened. A young woman, who had been waiting nearby, stood up. She had overheard everything. With steady confidence, she stepped forward and addressed the manager. "Do you realize who you're talking to? This man grew our food. Men like him worked through blizzards and droughts so people like us could eat. He deserves respect, not dismissal." Other customers began to nod and voice their agreement. An elderly couple spoke up about how farmers had always sacrificed so that the rest of the country could live comfortably. Soon, the entire waiting area was filled with murmurs of support. The manager looked around, realizing the room was no longer on his side. Feeling the pressure, he cleared his throat and softened his tone. "Perhaps, there is something we can do." He reviewed the farmer's file again, this time carefully, and made a decision. "We'll grant you the extension." The farmer's eyes welled with tears. His hands trembled as he whispered a quiet thank you, his voice thick with emotion. He rose slowly, nodding at the strangers who had stood up for him, strangers who reminded him that compassion still existed in the world. As he left the bank, walking a little taller despite his tired body, the others watched him go in silence. What began as a morning filled with cold indifference ended with a powerful reminder. One act of courage, one voice raised in kindness, can change everything. The story of that day spread through the small town and beyond, reminding people that farmers, though often unseen, form the backbone of every community. And for the young woman who spoke up, it was proof that sometimes the simplest words, spoken at the right moment, can carry the weight of justice. By the end, the bank manager sat alone in his office, replaying the moment in his head. For perhaps the first time in years, he realized that banking wasn't just about numbers. It was about people, about stories, about lives that hung in the balance. And in that moment, even he felt changed. The farmer returned home that evening as the sun dipped below the fields, his heart lighter. He still had challenges ahead, but he had something far more powerful than a loan extension. He had hope, and he knew he was not alone. This story reminds us that dignity must never be dismissed, and that kindness, when spoken aloud, can move mountains. Sometimes it takes only a single voice to turn 2 hours of waiting into a lifetime of meaning.